Hello again, Year 11, and welcome to this video on unseen poetry, exam tips and hacks. Now, although in this video I am offering you 5 hacks and 1 top tip, that is no way exhaustive of the things that you should be looking for in the poem that you are presented with. This video also only looks at the first question of your unseen poetry section. It doesn't take into account question 2, where you need to compare 2 poems. So first of all, let's look at what the mark scheme says. So you're going to be focusing on AO1 and AO2 in this exam. That means you need to be including quotations all the way as you go along. And like in your literature paper 1, you need to be analysing language, form and structure in order to get those top marks, especially level 8 and level 9. And in addition, you need to be making sure that you are using subject terminology within your written answer. So, hack number 1, colour. If you are stuck in the exam, have a look at the poem you're faced with and look to see if colour is mentioned at all, because colour is so easy to analyse and it can help you think about any emotions that are being portrayed in the poem. It can make you think about the character, any relationships that are going on at the time, any attitudes or tones that might be represented to you as the reader. So, for example, if the word red is in your poem, we know that this can symbolise anger or danger or blood. And on the other hand, it could symbolise love. So, of course, you've got to then use your common sense to make sure that you fit the interpretation to the poem. The colour blue is meant to be quite a calming, relaxing colour. Also has connotations of the ocean, of the sea. Green obviously has links to nature, so there might be a theme of nature within the poem. Green can also symbolise jealousy or envy. You might have heard of the phrase green-eyed monster, which is a Shakespearean reference. But yes, this could perhaps suggest that the narrator is feeling jealous or has felt envy at some point. Black obviously links to death, funerals, mourning. And white obviously symbolises innocence and purity. So hack number 2. Again, when you're looking at the poem, if you're not sure where to start, try and pick out some positive or negative words, because then these can lend itself to you figuring out the attitude or tone that the writer, the poet, is trying to create. So whether there are more positive words than negative words, you might be able to say then that a positive atmosphere has been created, or vice versa. However, the words negative and positive are a little bit boring, and the examiner is going to want to see that you have a big range of vocabulary to use. So instead of saying negative, you might want to have a think about these words. You could say that it creates a threatening atmosphere, or aggressive, or defiant, grim, or tragic, or regretful. Okay. In the same way, with positive atmosphere, you might want to think of other words that you could use rather than just positive. So we could have playful atmosphere, enthusiastic, romantic, nostalgic, compassionate, or optimistic. All right? And again, this comes down to your common sense as to which you think fits the poem and what it's talking about. Once you've kind of grouped these words into positive or negative words, depending on your ability and how confident you are with this, you could then go on to talk about semantic field and think about what theme those words are around, and that might help you analyse language even further. Hack number 3. When you're looking at the poem, can you figure out whether enjambment's been used or end stopping has been used by the poet? So this is an example of enjambment. So enjambment is where a phrase or a sentence runs over into the next stanza or into the next line, and typically it doesn't have punctuation at the end of each line. And this creates a quite chaotic structure which can suggest that the narrator themselves might be feeling quite chaotic, or they are experiencing something quite chaotic, or it might suggest something about an important relationship that they're in. Okay. On the other hand, we have end stopping. And this is an example of end stopping, where a phrase usually has its own line, and there is more than likely going to be punctuation at the end of the lines. And this suggests order. This creates an ordered structure, and it might be that the character, the voice within the poem wants structure. It might be that they feel that their life is quite rigid. It might mean that they are in the army because they have to follow lots of rules. So you've got two different ways of looking at the poem here, and of course this is going to be looking at structure, which is going to get you a big tick from the examiner. So hack 4 is graphology. Now, graphology is something that everyone can do, and I'd encourage anybody who is sitting an unseen poetry exam to consider graphology. So graphology is how the poem looks on the page. So I would encourage you to turn your page 45 degrees so that you can see the ends of the lines if it creates a certain shape. And that shape might represent a theme of the poem, might represent an emotion that's being discussed. Okay, so for example, if the poem is set in a busy city, you might have a look at the stanzas and think, oh, actually, that might be reminiscent of the skyline of a city. If the poet has a theme of death running throughout, you might have a look at the stanzas and you might think they look like regimented gravestones. If the poem is about a hospital or somebody giving birth or somebody having an operation, and within the stanzas there's one very big line, then it might suggest the heartbeat on a monitor. If the stanzas grow, then it might suggest that there is a growth within the poem. That might be an emotional growth, it could be a financial growth, anything. Again, you've got to use your common sense to make sure this fits to the poem that's being analysed. Again, instead of the city skyline, you might have the, you could say that the graphology reflects the images of mountains because maybe that's where it's set. Or perhaps the lines are scattered all over the page. It could suggest a winding path. Perhaps the narrator, the speaker, is going on some sort of journey. Or perhaps it's really, really regimented, which could suggest, I don't know, armies, or that the person likes their life in a very ordered way. Hack 5 is animal imagery, and this is a little bit like colour in that animals themselves, they automatically have different traits that we relate to them. So for example, a dove, birds are meant to represent freedom, so look out for that symbol in the poem. Of course, with the dove as well, we know that the dove brings the olive branch to Noah on his ark, so it's a symbol of hope too. A lion could suggest that somebody's feeling particularly brave, or perhaps they are scaring other people. Reversely to that, we have a mouse. Perhaps someone's feeling particularly timid or scared. A snake, we've discussed this before, I know, could represent evil. Perhaps there is an evil tone, or perhaps there's a particular person that is being likened to a snake because they have evil traits. Or perhaps a dog, which could suggest that somebody is feeling particularly loyal. Okay, and finally, the last thing I'm going to say to you is my top tip, which is know your subject terminology, because you need to have those words in your essay in order to impress the examiner. Now, on the left-hand side of this screen, I'm going to provide you with a list of subject terminology. I'm not going to go through with you what they all mean. If you are unsure, then pause this video and use that as your revision material. Because if you find it out for yourself, then it's much more likely to stick in your head. So, and that's it. So good luck in your exams, and I'll speak to you soon.